Hi everyone. This is the developmental sequencing video that goes along with the recorded webinar. So if you have a chance to check that out, if you didn't catch it live in the community, it is posted in both the community and the DSAP Facebook group. Pull it up, watch the lecture. It goes into great detail of why each of these specific pieces of the developmental sequence have to happen in order and in a specific way. But because it was impossible to share my slideshow and my demonstration, as well as get on the floor and show it during um, a live session, I will put this together separately. So this video is meant to be viewed along with that information. So very simply, we'll start by looking at how someone goes from laying on their back all the way into standing. And it looks something like this. And that's it. Okay, so it looks really straightforward until you realize all the integration, sensory motor integration, reflex integration, visual motor integration that goes into those steps. In this video, I just want to focus on the transitions and how to spot problems. And then for further information, please refer to the recorded session of the developmental sequencing webinar. So first of all, when our children are in supine, the first thing that they're going to learn is how to roll. Our goal is we want them to roll from their back to their stomach to the left. We want them to be able to roll back, and we also need them to roll to the right, and we need them to roll back. One of the things that can be a red flag during this process is the baby rolls over and they have their arm stuck underneath them. They can't free up their arm. This is an indication that there are some reflexes hanging around. When the head moves in a certain position, the arm moves in a certain position, it's automatic. The child rolls over and the arm is stuck. A good way to integrate reflexes is through weight bearing, proprioception, and crossing midline, right? So when they're in prone and they're playing on their elbows in prone prop is what this is called, they're getting nice stability to their shoulder girdles. They're getting proprioception in through their elbows. Their hands are in midline. They're feeling the surface they're on, whether it be a carpet or a mat or a hardwood floor. They're getting all of this nice integrating input. They're also getting proprioception through their core. Their visual motor system is being integrated up here in the third dimension. And now they're going to push up on their hands. They can track from side to side. This is what integrates the reflexes. And by the way, when they're here, this is when they're developing all the musculature for gross grasp. And then when they weight shift side to side, they develop radial grip and ulnar grip. And then ultimately one side or the other to play. Now, the next step from prone is very important. It's not quadruped. A lot of therapists will help the child from here and just hinge them back into quadruped and say, well, we're going to work on crawling. Absolutely not. When you go from here to here, you are working in one plane. You're moving into the anterior posterior plane. You are not integrating your sensory system, your visual motor system, and your reflex system. Sitting comes before quadruped. And in order to get into sit, you have to be able to roll onto your side. You have to be able to cross midline with this hand, and you have to be able to push up. That is how you get into sit from a lying position. A big red flag at this step will be If a therapist says, well, it's time to work on sitting, and they take your child and they put them in sitting, and here they are, typically they're ring sitting, right? And the child wants to get back down. The red flag is the way this child will attempt to get back onto the ground. They will either flop straight back using their available reflexes that are still hanging around, or they will spread their legs into a split and they'll pop over that way and get on their belly. We don't want any of that for many, many reasons, but that is a red flag that they are not creating the proper motor plans for the next stage of development. In order to go from a lying position to sitting, they need to visually motor integrate. They need to know where midline is. They need to integrate their reflexes because they have to flex and rotate their trunk. They have to flex their legs, all the while bringing the visual motor system up into the third dimension, their vestibular system into sit. It cannot be skipped. You have to get into sit from that position. And if I'm in this position and I want to go back onto my belly, we did the whole series of videos on playing on a diagonal. So when your child is sitting, they should never be in ring set. Just encourage to bring one leg in like this, switch legs, bring the other leg in like this. What does this do? This encourages the child to play on a diagonal. We're automatically off center. We are crossing midline. We're working over here. We're integrating our reflexes, our trunk rotation. We're segmenting our heads and our necks. Our uppers are doing something different from our lowers. Our right side is doing something different from our left side. We are integrating all the inputs, and that is important because the very next step is this. Now we're in quadruped. Now it's time to work on creeping. By the way, before we're able to get into sit, how do we integrate all our senses in order to be able to go into that side lie and come up into sit? Well, the answer is all the skill development the child has done in prone. So when they're in prone, they're interested in things around their environment. Movement is accidental, but they're getting a nice sensory input. They're learning that if I just pull this way, I can feel the pressure on my body. I move this way. Phylogenetically in the brainstem, when they're in prone, the way development happens starts with the more primitive areas first. So the first attempts at movement will be both arms together. They'll reach forward and they'll pull. Reach forward and pull. This is the inchworm. The upper extremities work together and do the same thing. The lower extremities are doing the same thing. Sometimes they're like this because they have a reflex sticking around and now they're pulling themselves forward with their lower extremities up. Once the child is on their bellies long enough to do that and to integrate everything they need to integrate, the next step up is the homologous crawl. That is same arm, same leg, same arm, same leg. Same arm, same leg, same arm, same leg. That's the homologous crawl. That's still at the level of the pons in the brainstem. Once they integrate that level enough, the next is the reciprocal army crawl. And now we're in the midbrain. If anybody has ever had their child evaluated using the developmental outline by the institutes, lots of times our children's issues pop up clustered around midbrain function. That's because that's the first time that this cross wiring needs to take place. After they have been on their bellies and they're doing this amphibious crawl, the homologous crawl, for a while, the next step they're going to integrate is the army crawl. And when we want them to army crawl, it is this arm, this leg, and it's a sweep with the head turn. It almost looks like they're swimming on the floor. It's so exaggerated. That's the cross pattern we need. All of this is going on before the child is fully able to get themselves into the sitting position. So all of this is working in concert. Um, as the book Symphony of Reflexes points out, it is a symphony. The reflexes, the sensory motor integration, all of those things are a symphony. Things emerge, things integrate, and then they become extinct while something else comes in their place. It is a symphony. When we work on things in isolation, we skip that. So if your child is down here and the therapist says it's time to work on sitting, and they pick the child up and they put him here, of course that child is going to learn how to sit. Of course they're going to steady themselves and get enough trunk control and get enough stabilization in order to sit. But they haven't integrated their systems in order to get there. And that's the foundation for everything else. So once they're in quadruped, we have gone from supine to sit to quadruped, and hopefully we're creeping on hands and knees. And once the child starts creeping, creep for distance, creep, 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 because not only is it a huge milestone for integration, but it is also a big indicator of integration. The more you creep, the more solid that cross pattern becomes because of the sensory information coming back in. So they're in quadruped, and now all of a sudden they decide they want to pull up to stand. What we should see is this. Unfortunately, if our children are sitting, I have seen children in a ring sit reach up, I can't even do it, and pull themselves into sitting straight over their legs. They just pop right up. Or you will have a well-intended therapist say, well, it's time to start standing. If the child cannot go from quadruped to tall kneel to half kneel to stand, that child is not ready to stand. What will we see if they're not ready? We will see them arch their back and lock their knees. And now they're going to cruise. Or they give them AFOs and something to walk with. And what do we see? We see them arch their back, lock their legs, and it's this kind of a walk using a walker. This is because reflexes and sensory motor systems are not integrated. What do we need for proper ambulation? We need to be able to rotate our trunk. We need our two legs to do two different things. This one needs to extend while this one flexes to take the step. All of these beautiful skills from left to right and top and bottom come from sensory integration, reflex integration, and visual motor integration. So those are the stages, and they shouldn't go out of order. How do we encourage our children to move from one stage to another? We give them opportunity to be on the floor and to integrate the sensation as it's happening. If you have a child who is insistent on getting up the wrong way, back up to the last stage that they could do properly and play there. So maybe your child can't get into sit by themselves. You can back up to this side sit position and have them play here. This is a great place to play to encourage the child to get themselves up into their own sitting position. You can play on an elbow here, or you can even play in side lie. Wherever they are, that they're able to do it correctly is where you give them opportunity to continue integrating. If they're able to sit and they're not able to get down properly, they want to flop back or they want to flop forward, make sure you're playing on diagonals. Make sure that every time they're sitting on the floor, instead of ring sitting, one leg is extended, one leg is flexed, and they play here. And that encourages them to then go this way to lay down on the floor or to get up into quadruped. Any questions? Jump in the group, send me a message. We've got open forums all the time in the group. If you have questions, you can ask them there or send me a direct message, and I will definitely get to you and answer your question. Thank you for watching.